We'll consider all the advice that's provided by the Chief Health Officer, and I know that the Chief Health Officer has been working very closely with the AFL, and I want to thank the AFL and indeed Rugby League for the very cooperative way in which they've engaged with our experts. Footy's back this week. That's a great thing for every single Victorian. I think we've just got to be cautious, we've got to be careful. That's the approach that we've taken. We don't want a second wave here, and that's why I don't think people should have been there on Saturday. It was not the right thing to do. But as Victoria Police made very clear, we weren't able to stop people. If you, for instance, said we're going to close off the CBD, well, the protest would have happened somewhere else. You can't lock 5,000, 10,000, however many thousand people up. You just can't do that. But the rules are there for a reason, and they're not there for the government. The rules are there for every single Victorian, and not just the vulnerable. This disease, this virus has killed otherwise healthy people, young people, not just in our country, but indeed right across the world. We're not out of this yet, and we've just got to be steady and cautious, do it once, do it properly, rather than rushing. I know everyone would like everything open yesterday. I would too. But that risks us having the failure that so many other countries have had. Absolutely.
10,000 people all crushed together. You put 1,000 at the MCG.
Well, again, let's follow the advice of the Chief Health Officer. Let's be guided by the data. That's why we're doing so much testing. And again, I'll make the point. If you've got even mild symptoms, come forward and get tested. Your effort in getting tested gives us information, gives us those results and data to make the best decisions for the future. Look, as soon as we can safely have crowds back at the footy, as soon as we can have crowds back for a multitude of different purposes, we will. But we've got to be cautious about this. And I think people will be focused on the fact that footy's back. That's absolutely fantastic news. We're not going to be able to go to games for a period of time. Well, let's be guided by the experts. Following expert advice has got us into this very enviable position, albeit a frustrating position, I know that. But this is so much better than so many other parts of the world who've been overrun by this, and there's no crowds there, and there won't be for the foreseeable future.
The protest on the weekend provided a bit of a experiment, if you like. There's no cases from the protest. Will we be able to open up restrictions a little quicker than we planned?
I'm not sure whether the Chief Health Officer would view it that way. However, we won't know the results of worthy cause, but a fundamentally irresponsible thing to do. We won't know the results of that for another 2 weeks. So you've got a 2-week cycle. That's why we'll continue testing, we'll continue monitoring, and based on results we get, and it's not just testing as a result of that event, it's testing every part of the state every single day. And I think just this week, I think we're pushing into a number of communities where the test results have been quite low, and we're going to target those to make sure that we're getting a really good sense right across the whole state. So I wouldn't necessarily see it that way, but again, the testing is so important. It's why we're doing so much, and it's why we're deeply grateful for every Victorian who takes the time, even with very mild symptoms, to come forward, get tested. That gives us options that we all want.
If there isn't an uptick in 2 weeks' time, once it's gone through the system, does that mean that people take on?
I'm not disagreeing with your logic. I'm just saying I don't know that anyone's viewing it that way. I think that our overall testing program is what will give us confidence or not, based on how many positive results we have, and indeed the nature of those positives. If they're close contacts of known cases, if it's an outbreak rather than community transmission, or if they continue to be, as has been the case, the majority of recent positive cases have been returning travellers in hotel quarantine. Now, you talk about people being frustrated. No one's enjoying spending 2 weeks in quarantine once they come home, but the sheer number of positive cases that we're getting out of that process just proves why it was the right decision to make. It's not cheap, but it's certainly preferable to having people, even if the vast majority of people did the right thing, but if even a few people who should be at home, they decide to go down the shops, or they decide to go and visit a friend, all of a sudden we've got community transmission, and then you run the real risk that this thing gets away from you. And that is not over. The risk of this getting away from us is still real. And I know people may think this is over. It isn't. If it were, then we wouldn't hesitate to wind back all the restrictions we've put on people. And again, we take the opportunity to thank everyone who's made a profound contribution in the simplest things all the way through to getting tested.
What is the split with return travellers and community?
I'll get you the exact data, but certainly in recent times, a week, 10 days or so, we've had many days where the majority of new cases have come out of the hotel quarantine process. We test our hotel quarantine people when they check in. I think some other states do it a bit differently. They test at the end. Testing at the beginning is really important to give you an accurate picture. All of those numbers are, of course, in our numbers. Some of those people don't live in Victoria. They just landed in Victoria and they'll...
We'll leave that there. Daniel Andrews, Victorian Premier, giving some, pretty interesting feedback, of course, for the first time speaking after these protests on the weekend, calling it a worthy act but irresponsible to go out and protest. We won't know, he said, obviously for a couple of weeks, the impact on all of this, pledging there to keep up the testing regime, of course, saying that it's great to have footy back, for example, but we do have to take these things slowly. Skynews.com.au, extra 2 on our website if you want to keep watching the Victorian Premier.